In May 2005, a decorated SAS war hero, Darren Waterhouse, was sentenced to life in jail for 30 years for the devastating murder of innocent young man Craig Barker in a botched Gangland hit. The real target was the infamous Darren G from the Griesdale estate in Everton, and the murder was the catalyst for more innocent deaths and broken families in the months to follow. But who was Darren Waterhouse, the elite Special Forces soldier found guilty of the messy Gangland attack that by court records was anything but the targeted precision military operation Waterhouse was specialised in? And how did he get involved in this Gangland feud in the first place? We must start with the Bosnian War, which took place in Bosnia and Herzegovina from 1992 to 1995, and was a complex and tragic conflict that arose from the breakup of Yugoslavia. The war began following Bosnia and Herzegovina's declaration of independence, which was contested by the Bosnian Serbs. They mobilised their forces to secure ethnic Serb territory, leading to widespread violence and ethnic cleansing. NATO's intervention in Bosnia and Herzegovina was crucial in establishing long-term peace in the region. Darren Waterhouse, a former Coldstream Guardsman who was then a Lance Sergeant, played a pivotal role in a critical incident involving his platoon, which was part of the international peacekeeping force in Sarajevo. Renowned for their discipline and courage, Coldstream Guards are infantry soldiers who specialise in light role operations, performing reconnaissance, operating machine guns and mortars, and engaging enemy troops on foot and in light vehicles. This versatility makes the regiment one of the most important fighting units in the British Army. Coldstream Guards also have a ceremonial role as protectors of the royal palaces, including Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace. During an attack by Serb forces in 1994, who were seizing British prisoners for negotiation purposes, Waterhouse's quick thinking and courageous actions were instrumental. A tripwire triggered a flare, alerting the group to the imminent danger as machine gun fire rained down on their observation post. Waterhouse took charge, organising his men's escape under heavy gunfire and explosive attacks, demonstrating complete disregard for his own safety. He provided covering fire, enabling his men to reach the safety of two armoured reconnaissance vehicles. This selfless act of valour saved the life of his fellow soldiers. So how did this courageous hero turn from military cross to gangland killer? Searching press and court records, it seems Waterhouse lost his way after the horrors of the Bosnia War and fell into crime. This is not unusual for ex-servicemen who suffer all sorts of challenges and trauma after serving in active war zones. And an article highlights Waterhouse being arrested in Bolivia in 1997 for hiding an ounce of pure white in shaving foam, attempting to smuggle it out of the country. I have no information on how long Darren Waterhouse served for that sentence, but there are also records of him being arrested later on for further drug offences and being imprisoned in England, where he befriended alleged gangster William Moore. It was alleged by the prosecution this is where the friendship was struck, and also how Waterhouse was drawn into the feud that ultimately led to the death of an innocent young man whose only crime was to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. In April 2004, Craig Barker was sitting in the front seat of a car in Robson Street on the Griesdale estate, delighted to be in the company of his older friends, including Darren and Ian G. Cruel fate struck when Darren G and Craig Barker swapped seats so Darren could play a computer game in the back seat, reverting from his usual position in the passenger seat. The prosecution alleged the highly trained SAS war hero, Darren Waterhouse, got out of his car and in anything other than a precision attack, sprayed the car with bullets, killing Craig Barker in the front passenger seat, riddling Ian G with bullets, but Darren G and another associate escaped physically unhurt. The exact nature of the dispute that led to this horrific act of violence seems relatively petty, according to Darren G. On his popular podcast, he states that the dispute started over G and John Moore getting into an argument when the older man was pressing the Gs and their associates to work for them. Now his older brother, William Moore, was due for release after serving a lengthy prison sentence. In William Moore's absence, the Gs had developed a stronghold on the Griesdale estate and was supplied by another notorious criminal and was staying loyal to him. They had built the estate into a no-go zone for rival firms and as a one-stop shop for any illicit drug you required and was lucrative. The Gs and their friends patrolled the streets dressed like urban soldiers in all-weather black Berghaus gear and on bikes. The Moores had allegedly known the younger Gs since kids and were both around 20 years the senior of the new generation, headed up by Darren G and his brothers. It can be assumed that due to their age and criminal history, the Moores would expect the younger G's to be subservient, but times had changed. Darren G alleges that they showed respect to the Moores, but he attacked John Moore after being approached by him in a car, and he thought that John Moore was carrying some sort of weapon. In a subsequent phone conversation with the older brother, William Moore, who was enraged his brother had been attacked and disrespected, Darren G stated that they would do their things their own way and would not buckle to William Moore's demands. This, I have to state, is Darren G's version. I've not heard the other side to the story, but what is established in the court records is that there had definitely been a falling out, and this was the prosecution's reasoning for William Moore planning the revenge attack on Darren G. It is alleged William Moore, who to this day, as far as I'm aware, still denies his involvement, paid Darren Waterhouse £10,000 to take out the hit on Darren G. According to a news report, Waterhouse had escaped prison and was on the run and was in need of money, so took the job on, and was the gunman who ended the life of the innocent young man Craig Barker, who was not involved in crime whatsoever. I do have to state at this point that Darren Waterhouse's family, friends and former colleagues did dispute the events and were fighting for his release as they believed he was innocent. I have reached out to the organisers behind the campaign started in 2012, but I've had no response, so do not know if they have failed in their attempts in appealing, but I will read extracts of their case in appealing Darren's role in the killing. This is a statement from the Miscarriage of Justice website on behalf of Darren Waterhouse supporters. I believe it was around the 2012. Darren used to serve with the Coldstream Guards and was honoured for his highly commendable actions by way of a military cross, and also presented with a Radar People of the Year award. Darren Waterhouse was convicted in 2005 for the murder of Craig Barker and sentenced to 30 years in prison. Darren has always professed his innocence to the crime and still does to this day. This involved the shooting of Craig Barker from Liverpool. Darren has associates from that area that he had met whilst in prison, previously whilst on a drugs charge. Yes, he was no angel, as far as being involved in drugs was concerned, but he is certainly not a killer. For one reason or another, he became involved in the drug culture, having left the army. While serving his prison sentence, he met his co-defendant William Moore. They became friends and associates outside of the prison environment. William had a brother John. There appeared to be some discontent with the notorious family, the G's, in Liverpool. On the night Craig was killed, Darren had agreed to attend Liverpool to see William. He had travelled up in his own car, using his own mobile phone to keep in contact with William and taking his dog with him. The prosecution alleged that Darren attended Liverpool as a contract killer and that Darren G was the intended victim, not Craig. This occurred on Robson Street on the Griesdale estate in Everton on April 6, 2004. Craig was in a car with three of his friends, Darren G, Ian G, Mark Richardson. The driver of the car was usually Darren G, the one who the Moore was having trouble with. Darren G had just got in the back of the car as he was playing with a computer game that had just been installed, so Craig was the driver. They were driving around the Everton area when a car was parked up and a male jumped out and opened fire on the Galaxy car they were in. Shots were fired all over the car in what was described as an uncontrolled manner. Craig was shot several times as he scrambled around in the car. Two passengers received no injuries, and one, Ian G, received injuries to his leg, stroke thigh. The gunman left the scene in his car, which was later discovered burnt out. The police attended the scene, and all parties refused to cooperate with the police. Later that evening, Craig died from his injuries. Later on, further statements were obtained from other occupants of the car. Darren G gave a description of the gunman as a red ginger-haired looking male wearing an alpine hat. Darren was arrested and Luton at his home address. Whilst at the police station, Darren was asked to cooperate in an identification parade, which he consented. The ID suite was new at Luton police station, and Darren had been arrested with no clothing on his upper body. It was a hot summer's day, and the police ID suite did not have any clothing to offer Darren, but the officer investigating the crime had a spare t-shirt. The t-shirt was taken and worn by Darren in the parade. It was a video parade. The t-shirt was navy, and the other volunteers on the parade were specifically selected who wore a navy t-shirt as well to blend in with the t-shirt Darren had been given. By the time the video had made its way up to Liverpool, the volunteers had been changed by the inspector as not being suitable, and the volunteers wearing a navy t-shirt had now been removed. The video was therefore shown to the three occupants in the car, who had now changed their mind and decided to cooperate with the police. Ian picked out Darren Waterhouse from the video parade, albeit in a statement He had said, "I didn't see him fire or what he was firing because I ducked down straight away. I can only recall both were white males, and that is all really. I can't recall any clothing or ages or sizes. It all happened too fast. My head was down in my lap area. The others did not make a positive identification." An anonymous witness stood approximately 12 foot from the junction, phoned the police and gave a description of the gunman as wearing a balaclava hat, cricket style, and overalls and gloves on. Darren Waterhouse was charged with the murder, along with William and John Moore. During the trial, it emerged that Craig's mother had given the police a list of several names that she believed were responsible for killing her son, and all the names on this list have since been shot and killed. There was also another male who was ginger-haired from the area and who had a fractured relationship with the G's, who had secured his alibi as he had been in an off-licence around the time of the shooting, where his girlfriend worked, and had secured the CCTV footage from the shop and logged it with his solicitors even before he'd been arrested and questioned. Slightly strange behaviour. Darren accepted that he was in Liverpool that night, that's Darren Waterhouse, but not to shoot or kill any person. During his trial, an ex-soldier attended the trial, who is now a serving police officer, and stated that Darren Waterhouse was an expert with firearms, and an uncontrolled shooting was not his style or how they had been trained to shoot. They had been taught a double tap when shooting to kill in the army, 2 shots to the chest and 2 to the head. Without sounding like boasting, he was too much of an expert to shoot in such a haphazard way. Darren Waterhouse and William Moore were convicted by the jury and sentenced each to 30 years in prison. The CPS proceeded to have another trial with John, who then pleaded guilty on the basis he knew harm was going to be caused but not death. Some years after the conviction, Darren G sent Darren Waterhouse an Xmas card stating that his brother had been able to pick him out on the ID parade, as the police had told him what t-shirt Darren was wearing. A statement was taken from Darren G by the solicitor. During the disclosure of the trial, the CPS refused to disclose the 999 call recording, stating it did not assist the defence or undermine the prosecution case. Mark Richardson phoned 999 when the car was under attack, and there were specific questions that the operator asked, especially in particular to descriptions of suspects. Based on this new evidence, an application was made to the Court of Appeal, who considered this new evidence from Darren G and dismissed the application, stating that Darren G was not a credible witness and could not be believed. An argument was presented by John Cooper QC, acting on behalf of Darren Waterhouse, that the 999 call was relevant in light of this new indication. The COA refused to see the relevance of this and did not agree the 999 call should be disclosed. If the 999 call does not undermine the prosecution or assist the defence, then why has this recording not been disclosed? The solicitors state that in most cases, the 999 transcript is served, then why was it not served in this case? This in itself makes it highly suspicious. Darren is adamant this 999 tape recording will prove his innocence unless we can find another witness who comes forward who is seen to be credible or further new evidence is found. This is a complete miscarriage of justice. Here is a highly trained soldier who, on the prosecution's case, could not carry out a contract killing on the right victim, used his own car and phone, and had to spray a car with 9 bullets from 3 feet away. The very same man who was awarded the Military Cross for his bravery and leadership and served 14 years, most of which was an instructor in weapons tactics. He also served on covert ops. It's shocking that Darren has to potentially spend the rest of his life in jail until he can prove his innocence. How can this be fair justice? Why won't the CPS disclose the 999 recording? This is vital evidence to prove Darren's innocence. Furthermore, Darren has 2 mobile phones on his person when he was arrested, both of which were seized by the police, and yet only evidence was served from 1 phone. Why did they not serve the interrogation report from the 2nd phone? The prosecution suggested that Darren received money for the killing. There was no evidence that funds had come from William Moore. Yes, Darren did have money, but that was from cultivating green. The police said that the crop had not come to fruition and served an account statement from the electricity company, which showed money had been put on an electricity meter from November 17, 2003 to January 22, 2004 in the sum of £210. After the court case, his defence team managed to obtain a full electricity statement, which showed that £1,650 of electricity had been used from July 04, and a full crop of green had been grown by this stage, contrary to what the police prosecution suggested. I've included this statement to give insight into Darren Waterhouse's supporters' doubts over the conviction. I cannot find any more evidence of the appeal progressing, so as it stands, Darren Waterhouse remains in jail and was found guilty. It is important to say that thoughts must go out to Craig Barker's family and friends, who must feel the pain every day of losing Craig, and another innocent man, David Regan, was murdered in a revenge attack due to Darren G believing he was the driver of the car for Darren Waterhouse. He was not the driver, and Darren G served a decade in jail for conspiracy to murder and lives with that on his conscience. Whether Darren Waterhouse is truly guilty is not for me to say, but this case does raise another question on how military men and women cope after life in the army, and is highlighted time and time again in ex-service people ending up in jail or on the streets after serving their countries. As always, my thoughts lie with all the broken families and lost lives in this tragic circle of violence, which shows although the underworld seems glamorous in films and media, it couldn't be further from the truth.